Hello again, and welcome to the beginning of another new video series. Seems like we've started a few new video series recently, which is okay, I think. It might seem like we're kind of all over the place. Maybe the reason it seems like that is because we are all over the place. But honestly, the plan for this YouTube channel was really just to share whatever comes to me from the Bible that I feel might be worth sharing. So this series is just simply titled Shorts. The idea is to share small things that come to me in the run of a day that might be encouraging or might be educational or just might be useful in the life of a Christian. I was thinking along the lines of those Our Daily Bread kind of readings, but just in video format. So, what I wanted to share today for the first video in the series, I was reading in John chapter 2, which takes place the beginning of Jesus' ministry in the Gospel of John. We find Jesus in Jerusalem, and he comes in and he cleanses the temple. And not entirely shockingly, the Jews are mad about it. And so they say to Jesus, "What sign do you show as your authority?" Which is kind of funny. In my experience, that type of a question is a classic sign that something smells really bad among the leadership, because Jesus comes in and does this fairly radical thing, right? He clears out the temple and he says, well, this is all wrong. This shouldn't be happening. And so in response, there's zero argument, there's zero discussion about whether what Jesus did was right or wrong. Nobody's interested in having that conversation. Of course he's right, but they don't want to talk about that. They want to talk about, well, who are you that you think you have the authority to call us out, right? We don't care about whether you have a valid point or not. It's whether or not you're someone whose opinion we have to care about. It's just a typical moving of the issue, right? But anyway, verse 19, Jesus answers them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." And of course, the Jews don't get it. They say in response, "It took 46 years to build this temple, and yet you will raise it up in 3 days." But of course, John tells us that Jesus is not talking about the physical building here. He's not talking about the physical temple. He is talking about his body. It tells us that right after, verse 21. But he was speaking about the temple of his body. So this, of course, this conversation, this claim that Jesus makes is pointing forward in time to the death and the resurrection of Jesus that is coming in the future, that he would die, that his body would be destroyed, but that he would raise it up again in 3 days. But now, here's the cool part. Here's the part that struck me that I wanted to share. If we fast forward all the way through the earthly ministry of Jesus, and we look now at Mark chapter 14, I'll flip over here to this is Mark 14. Jesus has been arrested here, and the authorities are essentially trying to trump up charges against him that will stick. It says, verse 55 here, it says, "Now the chief priests and the entire council were trying to obtain testimony against Jesus to put him to death, and they were not finding any." So this is, of course, just a kangaroo court situation. They just want Jesus out of the way. Um, and so they're just trying to come up with a charge that they can make stick against them. And then now in verse 57, it says, "Then some stood up and began giving false testimony against him, saying, We heard him say, I will destroy this temple that was made by hands, and in 3 days I will build another made without hands. So that's the testimony. Now, here's the thing. Is that what Jesus said back in the Gospel of John? Did he say that? No, that's not at all what he said. First of all, the text here in Mark tells us that at this point they're just inventing false testimony to try to get a conviction. But second, we can look back in John and we can see what Jesus actually said was, destroy this temple and in 3 days I will raise it up. In other words, if you, the Jews, the spiritual leadership, if you destroy this temple, I will raise it up. He did not say that he would destroy the temple. But I think the picture here that we see, that there's kind of a two-pronged picture, which I think is really cool. First of all, there's a knockback here to people who see Christianity as something that's built upon all of the people instead of being built upon God. Like I've heard people say, I've literally heard people say things like, well, God can't do anything unless we're willing to do our part to, to do his purposes, right? Unless we do our thing, he can't do his thing. Well, really? Are you sure about that? Oftentimes when we have that conversation, I'll just point them back to the creation narrative and I'll remind them that humans didn't show up till day 6, right? By day 6, 95% of the work is done before humans are even there on the scene. So I don't think God needs us as much as you might think. But the second thing about these two passages, there's a beautiful picture here of the sovereignty and the self-sufficiency of God, because do all the people do the right things in these two passages? No, of course they don't. But here's the beauty of it. Jesus speaks these words back at the beginning of the Gospel of John, picturing his coming death and his resurrection after 3 days. The Jews take those words, they twist them, they corrupt them, and they use false testimony against Jesus. But in doing so, they send him to the cross. In doing so, his body is torn down, and in 3 days, he raises it up again. So their opposition to the purposes of God, their distortion of his words, their corruption of truth, was the vehicle by which he accomplished exactly what he said he was going to do all the way back at the beginning of the Gospel of John. If we ever think that we can seriously oppose the purposes of God, we can't. If we ever think that God somehow needs people to do their part so that he can get things done, he doesn't, right? Here's a perfect example of he doesn't take obedience and service and use it to get things done. He takes disobedience and opposition and uses that as the vehicle to get things done. So that's my short that I wanted to share today. I hope it's been helpful for you. I hope it's been encouraging to you. By all means, take a look at the two passages we looked at, John chapter 2, Mark chapter 14, a beautiful picture from the Word of God. Again, hope you liked it. Thank you for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.